I ain't trying to represent, baby. I ain't do no wrong. Maybe that's how I start these. I just sing something that's stuck in my head. Anyways, hello! Today I'm going to create a character that is primarily a great old one, Warlock. It is my first time building a 2024 character, so it was a learning experience, and I want to share the experience with you in a video that will probably give you a snippet into the joys and pains of this process. This process took a lot of hours, which aren't normally done in a couple of days. All of these decisions are typically made periodically over months or years. I'll try my best to keep this video fast, but it is 20 levels, so skip around if you feel like it. The goals of this video are to build a character from the concept through 20th level. There will be an early 3-level bard dip, but it won't all be up front. I did learn a lot about the 2024 rules and the Warlock in this build, but if I did mess something up, I'd like to hear about it in the comments. Feedback is one of the few ways I can learn. I will also be taking this character pretty in-depth in the description because I really liked the character concept, probably more than I liked the build itself. That being said, this character will do well in a campaign with plenty of social interactions and in larger groups because he's a bit squishy and not damage focused. For the concept of this character, we are going to go with a psychotic, murderous gnome. Aesthetically, the closest thing I can think of is the leprechaun from the movies of the same name, but I've never seen the movies.
Is that me gold?
What the hell are you?
I'm a leprechaun, me dear.
What he wants to do is torture his victims using brutal methods. He wants to isolate and restrain them so he can maim them and bring them real fear for their life. He can't just be a solo murder hobo, so he'll get to do this for the good of the party, which is why he's going to be the interrogator. To do all of this, he's gonna have to be able to get into people's heads, literally and figuratively. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you like to see me build more characters. I'm asking humbly in very small font. I wanted to try to follow the order the new player's handbook gave very closely to see if the order was an efficient way to build a character. Though I think choosing a class is a good first step, I don't think anyone should start there when putting the pencil to the paper. Like, yeah, choose your class, but don't start putting things down on paper yet. I started it putting pencil to paper with the class first just to see how it went, and it was very frustrating because you'll pick something like a skill, then when you get to your origin, you might pick an origin that has skills you've already picked, so you'll have to go back and forth replacing things, or you choose an origin that might not work with your character to avoid going back. I think the list in the book should start with choosing a class, but clearly tell you not to start adding class features until the origin and species have been chosen. They can add class to the list a second time so the players can start filling in skills and features that the origin and species didn't provide. For this build, I already said we were choosing a Warlock with a dip in Bard. If I were doing a low-level build, I'd probably start looking at ability scores right now. I'd be doing point buy or point cost, as the player's handbook calls it. You get 27 points, and base scores from 8 to 15 cost a certain amount. Before I can do that, I need to backwards plan a little bit. This is a 20-level build, so we really need to plan out how we're going to get the most important ability scores to a favorable place. We don't know what kind of magical items we'll get, so we can't plan around that. If we do get a magical item that improves an ability score, then we may have to change our plans later. I'm not going to go through the process of every step because that would add 20 minutes to this video, but this is basically how I did it. The player's handbook tells you that charisma is the primary ability score for warlocks and bards. I decided dexterity would be more important early in the game because if I don't get a chance to control the situation, then non-detection and a better AC would be my fallback plan. My last resort would be to have more hit points to survive. I researched the classes and decided how many levels of Bard I wanted. I decided it was worth giving up 3 levels of Warlock so I could get 3 levels of Bard. With 3 levels of Bard, I'd get no ASIs or feats. With 17 levels of Warlock, I would get an ASI or feat 4 times, one at level 4, 8, 12, and 16. I then made a wish list that had plenty of half feats that included improvements to Charisma. I had others in there as well, but I prioritized Charisma feats, and ASI was included too. I chose the Wayfarer background because it had Dexterity and Charisma as options in the ability scores. Wisdom was also included, but I wanted a +2 to Charisma. I put the other +1 in Dexterity. Wayfarer also has the Luck feat, which was on my wish list. Lastly, I played around with the numbers until I was happy with the final results. This is how I bought my abilities. Strength and Intelligence are dump stats. Charisma is the most important stat, so I'm going to take 15 there. Dexterity and Constitution are nearly as important as each other. I wanted him to be more stealthy and harder to hit, so I'm prioritizing Dexterity. Constitution is important for hit points and concentration saves, but I'll just try to play smart in combat and try to stay away from the front lines of battle to avoid getting hit. I'm starting with Bard. Bards will start with 8 hit points plus their Constitution modifier. The reason I wanted to start with Bard is because Warlocks start with Wisdom and Charisma saving throw proficiencies. Bards have Dexterity and Charisma saving throw proficiencies. I think Dexterity saving throws are a little more common with monsters, but if you know you're going into a campaign with enemies that use more wisdom-based spells and abilities, starting with Warlock may be better. Talking about the order in which you build a character, another time when working on the class later is better is when you need to choose skills. I think it's better to choose your background first, so you know what skills to choose during the class part of the build. I knew what skills I was getting with my background, so I chose Deception, Intimidation, and Performance with my Bard. As alternatives, you could also choose Sleight of Hand, Persuasion, if you don't want to be the meanie with Intimidation, and or Perception, because it can be important for the game, especially if nobody else took it. He gets to use simple weapons. He gets 3 instruments. I chose the flute because it's going to be cheap in the beginning of the game, but also you could say it's a piccolo, which can be really shrill if you want it to be. I wanted him to be able to sing some unsettling songs too, so I envisioned him singing in falsetto with his ukulele like Tiny Tim did with Tiptoe Through the Tulips.
Oh, tiptoe through the window, by the window, that is where I'll be.
I also chose drums because I play drums, but it probably won't be a factor in the game unless there's an opportunity to start or join a drum circle or march troops into battle. He will also get light armor. I don't know why in the book they split up weapons and armor proficiencies if they have tool proficiencies, but they made a choice and stuck with it. We'll get a choice between starting equipment and gold. I'm going to take the 90 gold. First level bards get a d6 for their bardic inspiration. We'll probably give this to someone at the beginning of every major battle or before any important skill check, at least until he reaches 3rd level bard. He won't have anything else better to do with his bone action for now, so he should just hand it out freely. For cantrips, I'm choosing Friends as a cheap charm person. It's a cheap short-term charm spell that could be used to quickly get past a single guard before blending into a crowd, or if you are wrapping up a conversation and you just want one favorable answer before you leave.
You're screwed. Thank you. Bye.
Friends has limited uses since the person will know they were charmed, so you've got to use it and get out of there. Vicious Mockery is a good spell, but if you can reflavor it into Vicious Threats, it will be thematically good for this character since he likes to describe how he'd like to torture or disembowel someone. Plus, it does psychic damage, which is also thematic with the aberrant theme that we'll get when we take Great Old One. Maybe this is his first taste of physically hurting someone and he likes it. For first level spell, we'll take Bane, Charm Person, and Dissonant Whispers. I know Bane isn't as good as Bless because the enemy gets to try to save, but we don't get Bless. This is the best thing we get for a control spell, and it targets 3 enemies' charisma, which is usually a good save to target. Charm Person is just a step up from Friends. It lasts an hour instead of a minute. It's not great in battle because they'll get to roll with advantage if you're already fighting them. Later on, he'll be able to use this without verbal or semantic components, but the person will still know they were charmed when the spell ends. You could take Command instead of Charm Person if you want to be more combat oriented. With Command, you give the enemy a 1-word command like drop or grovel during battle, and they'll roll their save normally instead of with advantage, but it only lasts their next turn. Dissonant Whispers is an upgraded Vicious Mockery, dealing 3d6 instead of 1d6, but at the cost of a spell slot. The last spell we'll take this level is Fairy Fire. I like it for its flexibility. The enemies get to make a dexterity saving throw, but if you know about where the invisible person is, then you can see where they are and the attacks against them have advantage. Not bad. For the background, I chose Wayfarer. This looks like an attempt to put a more positive spin on the urchin background. The real definition of a wayfarer is someone who travels, particularly by foot. So I think their description is closer to that of a homeless person. Either way, the description of the background isn't helpful, but the things you get with it are helpful. We'll grab a +2 to Charisma and a +1 to Dexterity instead of getting a +1 in all 3, Charisma, Dexterity, and Wisdom. We get the Lucky Feat, which was on my feat wish list. For skill proficiencies, we'll get Insight, which will help with my interrogations. I will be better at telling if someone is telling me the truth or just what they think will stop the interrogation. He'll also get Stealth, which he will use in conjunction with Darkness and Invisibility to stay hidden after he gets those spells. He'll get Thieves' Tools Proficiency, which may help if he's the only one in the party with it. Otherwise, the rogue may do better. For equipment, we'll just take the money here also. 50 gold pieces. With the ability score adjustments, we get a 16 Dexterity and 17 Charisma. If you're starting this character at first level, then his ability scores are going to look like this for a long time. Eventually, we'll get a 20 Charisma though. We have all the gold we need to buy gear now, so let's do that. We'll get our studded leather. We'll pretty much live in this because there's really nothing better we can get, but we will try to get anything that will boost our AC like a Ring of Protection. We'll buy a flute and a lute, but we'll reflavor them as a piccolo and ukulele for reasons I've already discussed. I want a club for torturing. Even though we have a -1 to our damage modifier, I think that actually works in favor for us using a club as a torture weapon. He will be able to beat someone for a very long time while he's interrogating them with intimidation without killing them. The dagger will be a multi-use tool. He can cut ropes, use it as a wedge, feed it to a rust monster, use it in more serious interrogations, or throw it as a last resort. The Explorer pack just has a bunch of useful stuff that I won't go over here. A costume is what he's going to wear as clothing until he can afford some higher quality clothes. It's just going to be like a magician's suit with a top hat. A grappling hook because climbing is not his thing. Manacles because incapacitating someone is his thing. I would actually get 3 pair of these, a small, medium, large. This may be an ask your DM situation, so I only listed 1 set. I think all sizes will cost the same, 2 gold, so we won't break the bank. Things like traveler's clothes might be good if your DM cares about wear and tear, but right now I want to make sure I have some change for anything that might come up in first level. The Rock Gnome is going to give us more flavor to this character than the background, probably equal flavor to the class. His name is Derrig Blarneypepper. I figured since he gave off a bit of an evil leprechaun vibe, then I'd go with a silly Irish name. After I named him, I discovered this was a name of someone in Critical Role, but it was a word I found while researching mythological leprechauns online, which is probably how they got that name too. His size is small. Even for a gnome, he's on the short side. I wanted him to give off creepy vibes with a stereotypical short man complex. I didn't see anything about weight in the player's handbook. If you know where it is, let me know in the comments. I think weight is more important than an exact height because there are some things like a rickety bridge that may collapse under a certain amount of weight. I used to build characters as light as possible because of this. Also, if someone had to carry you, a light character was less likely to cause someone to become encumbered. Now, I think they have easier rules for moving people, which is basically that you move half speed when grappling someone unless you have the grappler feat. Let me know if that's wrong too. But at least their movement is 30 feet. It's nice that they don't have a penalty for being small. Gnomes also get dark vision out to 60 feet. Gnomish cunning gives them advantage on mental saving throws, which we will really need here because of this poor intelligence and wisdom. He should be really solid for charisma saves against spells like banishment. He's still really bad at strength saves, but he's a non-fighter gnome. We'll allow one weakness, right? The rock gnome lineage is where a lot of flavor is coming from. He gets to create a clockwork device, which can be a toy, music box, or something tinkery like those. His shtick is that whenever he wants to intimidate or kill someone, he'll pull out a dark and twisted toy. Every day, the rock gnome can spend 10 minutes creating a toy, music box, or fire starter. Like I said, his shtick is that whenever he wants to intimidate someone or he wants to kill someone, he'll pull out a toy, which is a dark and twisted version of that toy. According to the rules, he's supposed to decide what the toy is exactly upon creation, but I think for thematic reasons and with a little prestidigitation, you should be able to decide at the time of use what it's going to be and what it'll do. He'll only decide once a day though. Once he's created it, he can only change minor details using prestidigitation. The toy will normally play a song, usually slowly, and he will talk over the music, making threats and demanding answers or actions. The following are some situations and ideas for use. For a person he intends to kill, a jack-in-the-box that plays Pop Goes the Weasel. When the song reaches Pop, a wooden head looking like the person's head pops out of the toy and lands on the floor. After the song finishes, Derrig gives a last little quip, then attacks. For a person he is interrogating or intends to torture, a music box that looks like a topless carousel that plays Ring Around the Rosie. In the middle is a person about to be tortured or interrogated. Moving around the middle are small figures with clubs and other weapons. The weapons move up and down as they circle like they are slowly beating the person in the middle. When the song reaches All Fall Down, all of the outside figures smash the center figure to bits. If the target is someone with a pet, steed, or familiar, create a wooden pull-along toy that places the pet in front, followed by a gnome with a club. As it is pulled, the pet visually yelps as it makes an audible honk or squeak. As it's pulled, the gnome raises and lowers its club. When the club is all the way down, the toy makes a wooden thunk sound. For a person that he hates or he is going to torture, have a see and say toy. Every spot that the arrow can point at is the face of the person in varying states of distress. When the string is pulled, it says disturbing things like, the goblin says, "Ah!" or the human says, "No, please, I have children." That was the sounds of bones crunching. Just go with it. Other toys he can make is like a doll and a guillotine. You pull the lever to move the blade down. The blade gets to the bottom, then you continue pulling to move the doll's head down from its body. Lift the lever to reset. This will be a good one when Derrig gets the silent image or major image and creates a guillotine. Last one, he creates a stuffed monster that has a pouch in its stomach. You can pull long, thick strings from the inside like guts, which causes the toy's head, arms, and legs to thrash around. Turn a little handle to wind the guts back up. Okay, enough fun. Let's get on with the character. The studded leather armor provides an armor class of 12, then we add +3 for our dexterity, giving us a total AC of 15. Because this AC is pretty abysmal, we'll have to protect ourselves through other means, mainly hiding in darkness or being invisible. I'll give Derrig a little bit of background. Derrig wasn't a street urchin, as the player's handbook would describe the Wayfarer. Instead, he's more true to the definition in that he travels mostly by foot. He spent 20 years on the road as a magician, constantly evolving his act. He started out with unimpressive or tired tricks that started integrating clockwork devices into the act. He found that he got more laughs and attention after his show was over, when he would sit around with drunk bar patrons and insult them. His small stature made the name-calling and threats come off as jokes, particularly when targeting the biggest or strongest of the group. He integrated his tactics into his show, which significantly improved his earnings from his previous performances. He'll likely be introduced to the rest of the adventuring party when he's performing one of these insult comic shows or on his travels looking for gig work. Derrig has a negative outlook on life and struggles finding the good in people. On the road, struggling to get good food in his stomach, so there aren't too many barriers stopping him from committing evil acts as a means to an end. He'd be okay with hurting and killing people, but he's not fond of the consequences that come along with those acts. If every gig ended in a brutal bar fight, he'd still sleep well at night. It looks like the player's handbook removed the ideals, bonds, and flaws part of the character creation. I think those were okay for new players who had no idea where to begin creating a personality for a character, but I think there are better resources for developing a character than the player's handbook. I think most people either don't care much about their character's personality, they just wing it, or they really dive into the personality and find other resources to help them. There is a small paragraph at the end of Step 5, fill in the details, titled Create Final Details, and I'm going to indulge the book and answer these questions. I may or may not reference these questions in future builds. What is your gender? Male. I think for this build, I just visualized a male with his pointy beard and magician suit. I also imagined him being creepy and menacing, which is a bit easier to pull off as a male. In my mind, the stereotypes are easier to play as a male, but if I wanted to be more likable or underestimated, I may have gone with a female to leverage other characters' stereotyping of females. What person or people do you care about most? At the beginning of this adventure, he would probably not care about anyone too much. He spent years performing in ways that he thought others would enjoy, and it wasn't until he told people what he really thought about them before he started making some money. He's thinking the common folk really are the dregs of society. He mostly gets ignored by anyone of social standing, so he has a low opinion of them too, but at least if they do give him money, it's a little more money. So when a group of adventurers come along and bring him into the party to achieve some sort of common goal, he's going to think these people are the only people worth caring about. What's your deepest fear? His deepest fear, since finding some sort of success, is going back to being completely insignificant. He doesn't want to go back to being background noise while people are talking and drinking or shopping in the market. This is one of the reasons why he's becoming interested in the Great Old Ones, because they are super powerful beings that he wants to gain power from. So that way he will always be able to force himself into a position of significance. On your adventures, will you seek knowledge, wealth, glory, enlightenment, justice, mercy, power, or something else? I think he wants to seek out knowledge and wealth because those are tools for power. He wants power because he was treated so poorly by society for so long, and he wants to use that power as revenge on society. If he's with a group of adventurers that are predominantly good, there's going to be a lot of room for character development because of this. He's going to start to see the good in people and change his opinions, and by the end, he's going to use his powers and position to help the poor and the struggling performers. If he ends up with a bunch of neutral or evil characters, he's really going to embrace the desire for revenge on society and help subjugate or slaughter the common folk.
Hate, 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 hate. Double hate.
Loathe entirely.
Usually I like to give my characters a fairly wholesome family background because it can be used by the DM to develop a deeper story, but for Derrig, I want to keep it logical and simple. His mom took care of his needs, but maybe split her attention between him and all of her pets that may have consisted of toads, mice, dragonflies, or lizards. His dad was a bit more distant, always working on some new tanker idea, but never hitting it big with one of his inventions. Language seems like it's a bit of an afterthought now since it's not tied to your species or background anymore. I think that's okay because I think for a lot of DMs and campaigns, it's kind of an afterthought. If D&D got rid of languages, I think it would be just fine, but it does add some flavor and it gives DMs a tool to use. I chose Gnomish because of his species and Deep Speech because, great old ones. But if the DM doesn't allow deep speech, then Dwarvish because gnomes are kind of underground and so are dwarves. Alright, it's class levels from here on out. At second level Bard, Derrig gains expertise in 2 skills. I'm going to take Interrogation and Stealth. Personally, I think they should combine Interrogation and Persuasion and allow characters to be good cop or bad cop using one skill, but they haven't made that change, so I'm choosing bad cop. I want him to be creepy and threatening to influence others. If you want to optimize or go good cop, then take Persuasion instead. I also want Stealth because that's how I'm going to survive this campaign without good armor class. Unseen and Unknown is hard to target. These 2 skills are about 50% of the reason I want to take a few levels of Bard. So many builds take levels of Bard and I really wanted to avoid it, but this is how I'm going to do what I really want to do well. If he's in a small party or no one else took Perception, then that's an option too. But his Wisdom isn't good, so I'd just be stacking a little bit on nothing and that won't help too much. Jack of all trades means he's not going to be too bad at any skill. Sort of like Gnomish Cunning, this will help cover any weaknesses he might have by letting him add half of his proficiency bonus to any ability check he's not already proficient in. Also, we get another first level spell slot and another prepared spell. He'll take Thunderwave. At some point, I wanted to get the telekinesis feat, but I decided it didn't give me the effect I wanted for the character theme. So I would flavor Thunderwave to make it a telekinetic push that does some damage. In a way, I think this is better because it uses a low-level spell slot, but the enemy has to be close, and it's really loud. It's audible up to 300 feet, which will ruin any element of surprise if it's used. At third level, I wanted to start getting into my Warlock class. If you wanted to take the third level of Bard first, you would get a bit of power bump with the Glamour subclass, but I wanted to start tapping into the Warlock side of things now because this is a Warlock build. I want to be a Warlock by third level. Invocation, Eldritch Mind. It's not as good as War Mage, but we can change our invocation later. Eldritch Mind will give us advantage on our concentration checks, which is much needed. We already took Bane, which requires concentration, and we're going to get more concentration spells. We will also get Pact Magic. The way the multiclass rules look to me is that Warlock spells are so different than any other caster, it's just its own thing. In the multi-class rules, Pact Magic has its own paragraph that basically says you use Warlock's spell slots for spells you gained as a Warlock. Cantrips, Eldritch Blast, of course, and Minor Illusion. Minor Illusion can be useful, especially as a cantrip. There are in-combat uses that I won't discuss here, but I can show NPCs illusory maps or a picture of someone or a model of an item I'm looking for when I'm questioning someone. Most of the time, they'll know it's an illusion, but it can be a lot of fun and flavor. For first level spells, I'll take Armor of Agathis for a little protection and to discourage people from hitting the squishy Warlock, and Hex. Hex's biggest benefit at this point will probably be the extra 1d6 damage, but if you have a grappler in the group, you can give the hexed person disadvantage on strength checks. Hex will be much better later after we get some other features. At Warlock, second level, he gets Magical Cunning. Recover half your spell slots by taking a 1-minute break. It's good. Once per long rest. Eldritch Invocations. He'll get Agonizing Blast. It's vanilla but effective. Pact of the Chain. I'll probably use the imp the most because it has a flying speed. Derrig will customize his hat so the imp can hide in there and still see out through some thin fabric. Then Derrig can act like he's going to pull a rabbit out of his hat, but instead an imp flies at the person's face. Quasits are also cool with their abilities that I'm not going to list. Go read them yourself. The only aberration option is the Slod Tadpole, but it's pretty underpowered. Maybe Derrig can use one if he needs something with a burrow speed, like if he needs to look around for something buried. I think the typical choice here is to take Devil's Sight, and we'll play the Darkness game later, but Derrick's mother had all the pets. It's his turn now. The big benefit here is that your imp can just be invisible, fly someplace within range, and you can cast a spell on someone like Eldritch Blast. Prepared level 1 spell, Tasha's Hideous Laughter. It can incapacitate a character and be upcast to add additional characters when he gets that ability. A lot of spells Derrig will get will specifically target people. This one targets anyone. Plus, if it is used on a person and no one attacks them, you can slap your manacles on them before you torture them. At 5th level, we're going to take our 3rd level of Warlock, where we'll get his subclass. It's a lot, so I'm going to try to make this fast. We'll replace the spell Tasha's Hideous Laughter for Hold Person because we'll get Tasha's Hideous Laughter in our subclass. Hold Person is the better spell because paralyzed is a much worse condition than the incapacitated, but you can only target one person at this point. Whereas Tasha's Hideous Laughter lets you target creatures, and as a warlock, you will automatically be able to upcast it to a 2nd level spell to include a 2nd target. Great Old One is aberration themed, and Derrick's favorite is going to be Cthulhu. With the Great Old One subclass, we'll get Awakened Mind, which as a bonus action, choose one creature you can see within 30 feet of yourself and create a telepathic bond. So you'll be the router when the party needs to talk in stealthy conditions. Derrig is also going to use this to mess with his enemies. The rules just say you communicate telepathically. It doesn't say how that voice sounds in their head. You can make it sound all whispery and creepy or evil and devilish. DM should have limits though, like you should have to roll performance checks to see if it's convincing, or if you're trying to imitate somebody's specific voice, just like any other time a character wants to change their voice. Great Old One prepared spells at 3rd level are Detect Thoughts, Dissonant Whispers, Phantasmal Force, and Tasha's Hideous Laughter, which I talked about earlier in this advancement. All of these are right up our alley for interrogation or just messing with someone's mind. Even at this point, it's easy to see that there's a lot of spells with wisdom saves, but Phantasmal Force is an outlier because it requires an intelligence save. Psychic spells. When you cast a Warlock spell that deals damage, you can change its damage type to Psychic. In addition, when you cast a Warlock spell that is an enchantment or illusion, you can do so without verbal or semantic components. This is pretty cool, and I'm going to try to target enchantment and illusion spells to be able to do this. For a prepared 2nd level spell, I choose Darkness. Most people want to be able to get the enemy in the darkness and attack them there, but I didn't take Devil's Sight yet. And I don't want to interfere with my party's ability to see, so I'm going to use this as concealment. I can cast it behind in the back of the battlefield, pop out of it to fire an Eldritch Blast, then pop back into the darkness. Other ranged allies and enemies can do the same, but it makes Derrig less of a target and it doesn't end when he attacks like invisibility. 6th level, College of Glamour Bard. College of Glamour is Feywild themed, so you may wonder, why did I go this route? There's a lot of synergy here. To justify it, you can say that Cthulhu can see the power and potential you have if you tap into the Feywild for just 1 level. In fact, he demands it. It's another loaded level, so let's get through it. We're going to replace Spell, Charm Person, and go for Silence. We're going to get Charm Person in our subclass, and Silence can be a useful spell, right? Subclass, College of Glamour. We're getting Beguiling Magic. You always have the Charm Person and Mirror Image spell prepared. In addition, immediately after you cast an enchantment or illusion spell, you have a chance to cause a creature to have the Charmed or Frightened condition. You can see how this synergizes with the Great Old One now, right? This is almost like mini twin Charm Person, since Charm Person is an enchantment spell. Mantle of Inspiration. Using a bonus action, you can spend a use of Bardic Inspiration to give other creatures temporary hit points, and then they can use the reaction to move up to its speeds without provoking opportunity attacks. Derrig will have to play a little song to use this, but if stealth is out the door, I'll probably use this ability on every major battle. For a Bard 2nd level spell, Blindness Deafness. If you're dealing with a single target and you want all of the benefits of darkness with none of the drawbacks, then go ahead and use a Bard spell slot for this. They'll get to try to make a Constitution save though. It's flexible if you can find a use for the deafness option. It's a transmutation spell, so we'll have to use the verbal component, and that will make it hard to deafen someone to allow the fighter to sneak by, because they're gonna hear you cast the spell. At 7th level, and every level afterwards, we are taking Warlock. A lot of the levels are easier to get through because they aren't as loaded, and we need that because we've gotten so much in the first 6 levels. There's going to be a lot to keep track of. Level 4 Warlock. For our feat, we'll take Shadow Touched. We will increase his charisma score by 1. Shadow Magic lets us choose one level 1 spell from the Illusion or Necromancy School of Magic. So we're taking Silent Image. You always have that spell and the Invisibility spell prepared. You can cast each of these spells without expending a spell slot once a long rest, which is great because Warlocks have limited spell slots, so these free castings are great. Silent Image can take up a 15-foot space, and the image doesn't necessarily have to be something that only projects outwards. So I can create a room projecting inwards, say an interrogation room, that the person I have tied up in a chair wakes up and sees no way out. Or you can have them tied to a tree in an open field, but they think that they are dangling over a pit of spikes and you're cutting away at the rope as you interrogate them. Invisibility is also good and can allow you to get into more shenanigans with abilities you'll get later on. For our next cantrip, we'll take Mind Sliver. It has an intelligence saving throw, which can be a good saving throw to target. It does psychic damage, which is thematic, and they have to subtract 1d4 from their next saving throw. Yes, please. The damage is paltry with a 2d6 at this level compared to your Eldritch Blast, but some creatures have really high AC and low intelligence, and you really need to land your next leveled spell. When you reach 10 levels of Warlock, you'll get Eldritch Hex, and that can give them disadvantage on a saving throw though. So if you can set things up right, you can get a double whammy of disadvantage and negative 1d4 on their next saving throw. For our 2nd level spell, we're going to take Suggestion. It's sort of like Charm Person, but it can last 8 hours and the person will roll normally if you cast it in combat instead of letting them roll with advantage on their saving throw like Charm Person. Oh, this level is so long. Alright, level 5 Warlock. I'm going to get 2 Eldritch Invocations, Devil's Sight, and 1 with Shadows. Devil's Sight will finally let us see in and through our darkness. I think I'd still use darkness in the same way I have before, where I cast it outside of the battlefield, but now I can fire Eldritch Blast out of the darkness with advantage most of the time. Let me walk you through the convoluted way I had to make sure you get advantage. Go to the rules glossary, look up darkness. Darkness says you are heavily obscured. Look up heavily obscured. Heavily obscured says that you have the blinded condition when trying to see something that is heavily obscured. Like blinded means attack rolls against you from the obscured person have advantage. So they don't need to be in the darkness with you if you're using ranged attacks like Eldritch Blast. 1 with Shadows lets us cast invisibility on ourselves without expending a spell slot if we are in dim light or darkness. You might be saying, this makes Shadow Touched a waste now, and you're heavily obscured in your darkness spell. What more do you need? Well, sometimes you don't have darkness or dim light, so Shadow Touched will still be useful. Plus, the Shadow Touched has an ability boost and another free use spell. Darkness is still useful too because invisibility takes an action every time you use it, and you lose it when you attack. I'd probably try to buy a big cloak and throw it over myself to get free invisibility in its shade, but then there would be some argument that the cloak would be a worn item that is not in dim light or darkness. You'll have to work it out with your DM, but I think it's still worth it to be unseen in as many ways as possible at these higher levels. Third level spell, Fear. We already have a lot of control spells like Suggestion and Tasha's Hideous Laughter, but maybe we just want creatures in a 30-foot cone to just go away for a minute. Fear is an illusion spell, so if you have a stray creature outside of the cone, you can use Beguiling Magic to get them too. I wish the Fear spell could be used in interrogations too. Like if they're restrained and can't get away from you, you'd have advantage on intimidation checks against them, but they do have disadvantage on ability checks against them while they're frightened. So maybe you can't intimidate them, but you could lie to them a lot easier because they'd have disadvantage on insight checks. Something to think about. Derrig also gets subclass spells this level, Clairvoyance and Hunger of Hadar. I can't see myself using one of my few spell slots on Clairvoyance, but maybe on a low combat day, I could use it, then take a nap if I needed to. Hunger of Hadar is cool, super thematic, powerful, and long range, but it's kind of small at a 20-foot radius. You can't move it, and the damage is meh. The difficult terrain could be good in a choke point, but I think this will be best used in a small area where the enemy is trapped and can't leave. But if you have a wizard or sorcerer in the party, they've already dropped a fireball in the room and cleared it out. I might be tempted to take Repelling Blast instead of one with the shadows to get more use out of this. I just think I'll get more use out of the free invisibility than Repelling Blast. Although Derrig does have Thunderwave, which can affect multiple creatures in an area, so there's that. Also, I didn't mention this at the Warlock's third level, but there's a column in the Warlock features table that says slot level. What that means is any spell you cast with Warlock's spell slot will be cast at that level. So at third level, you can cast your first level spell as a second level spell. Now that we're a 5th level Warlock, we're casting all of our spells as a 3rd level spell. So Tasha's Hideous Laughter will always target 3 enemies at this level if there are enough enemies. With this, lower level spells will either target more enemies or do more damage when casting at a higher level. Some spells will have more detrimental effects or do more damage, but probably only to one target. So read your spells where it says using higher level spell slot and pay attention to what level you will be casting them at. Alright, level 6 Warlock. Subclass Clairvoyant Combatant. When you form a telepathic bond with a creature using Awakened Mind, you can force that creature to have disadvantage on attack rolls against you, and you have advantage on attack rolls against them. You can use it once per short rest or long rest, which is more generous than a lot of other features. For a 3rd level spell, we're going to take Major Image. There are some better spells at this level, like Counterspell and Fly, but I'm going to try to stick with the theme and stick with Illusion and Enchantment spells. With Major Image, I'm going to get a better Torture Room or Holodeck, if you know the Star Trek reference. I want to create a room that can now have natural sounds. Like I can create a room that has spiked walls that close in with the sound of gears moving behind grinding metal walls. Or if I already have a good room, because maybe I bought a stronghold with a basement at this point, I can create a Mind Flayer creature in the room with my victim while I talk to them telepathically, like a Mind Flayer does, and threaten to suck their brains out. There would be sound coming from the creature's clothing, breathing, and slimy tentacles. Level 7 Warlock. We get an Eldritch Invocation. We're going to take Investment of the Chainmaster, which allows your familiar to attack. Which I assume if you had a familiar, they could do this already, but apparently not. Even if your DM allowed your familiar to attack somehow, there are other benefits. It can change its bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage to necrotic or radiant. You know, we're choosing necrotic. They also get some defensive buffs. They can also gain a fly or swim speed, which could bring everyone's nightmare true with a flying spider, or you could make your slad pole fly into someone's eye or ear. We get a 4th level spell, Charm Monster, because why shouldn't you have a spectator show you the way through the Underdark? We get some subclass spells, Confusion and Summon Aberration. I don't care for the Confusion spell. I think I'd rather hit them with Fear. With the Confusion spell, you use a 4th level spell, and if they fail a Wisdom saving throw, they lose their bonus action and reaction. And there's a 60% chance they don't attack, and a 20% chance they attack a random creature around them, which could be you or your allies anyways. Also, it's just a 10-foot radius sphere. I'd rather use Hunger of Hadar because it's bigger, and at least it gets an extra 1d6 as a 4th level spell. I think I'd look at some homebrew options and clear it with the DM before using it. Summon Aberration is much better. You can put an extra body on the battlefield, they can attack, and there's a variety of options for the type of spirit he can summon. If you can't charm a spectator, then you can summon a beholder spirit. Or you could have a slod and a flying slod pole. Or you can have a mind flayer spirit that really does damage instead of using major image to torture people. Derrig also gains access to 4th level spell slots, and all of his spells that are cast with Warlock spell slots are cast as 4th level spells. Level 8 Warlock. We finally have a kind of easy level. We're going to take an ASI, which is a +2 to Constitution, which will increase hit points and concentration. At this point, we are an 11th level character, so we'll get 11 extra hit points. For our 4th level spell, we'll take Dimension Door. I haven't really done anything for this character's maneuverability since I took 1 with Shadows, and that only made invisibility easier. This is the best teleportation spell available to us. It's the only one because I didn't take Misty Step, and Warlocks don't get access to the teleportation spell. It's a good get your buddy and get out of jail free card, or get you and your buddy in jail if that's where you are trying to go. With a 300-foot range, it can get you places. Alright, this is level 12 character, level 9 Warlock. We're back to a normally loaded level. We get Contact Patron. Once a day, you get to ask Cthulhu 5 yes or no questions. You're really asking your DM for yes or no answers, but you get to watch them squirm while they try not to confirm the whole plot of the campaign. We also get an Eldritch Invocation, lessons of the first one, and we'll take Alert. Yeah, Derrig is just going to take a feat here. It would have come in handy a lot earlier, like at 8th level instead of 1 with Shadows, but Alert will still be a good boost here. 1 with Shadows will still be good here, but not as much as 8th level. For a 5th level spell, we'll take Synaptic Static. The psychic damage is on brand. It's like a psychic fireball that targets intelligence saving throws, and if they fail their save, they take 1d6 penalty on attack rolls, ability checks, and concentration checks. Wizards and sorcerers get fireball at 5th level, and they can upcast it to 6th level at this point for 11d6, and you get 8d6 with Synaptic Static at 12th level. At least you're so much cooler than they are, and you probably have a solid nap routine by now. Subclass spells. Modify Memory. Telekinesis. Modify Memory is free, so I'll take it. I'd probably try to run up some debt through the campaign and make the person remember that I just paid the debt off, but there's more layers to the lie if they keep records or if they're expected to open the register and see thousands of gold. Derrig could also use it like the Men in Black flashy thing where you just erase the memory of someone who just saw him do something crazy. Telekinesis is cool though. It's concentration, so you can't drop Hunger of Hadar and move people into it, but you can move huge or smaller creatures 30 feet each round into existing hazards or throw them off of cliffs. It lasts for 10 minutes and you can switch targets, so in theory you could throw up to 100 creatures off of a cliff. 10 rounds per minute times 10 minutes, 100. It really should have a better range. I won't go down the rabbit hole right now though. I just like the idea of a little gnome with a strength of 8 manhandling huge objects with his mind. There's no weight limit on it either, which is kind of cool. Derrig also gains access to 5th level spell slots this level, and all of his spells that are cast with Warlock spell slots are cast as a 5th level spell. This is the last time this raises. Level 10 Warlock. In some of these later levels, I'm going to shore up some of those lower level spells I couldn't take earlier, so I'll start with the cantrip, Chill Touch. At 13th level, it's doing 3d10, which is pretty weak, but it's the healing prevention that we're going for. Also, if the enemy is within 5 feet of Derrig, Eldritch Blast has disadvantage. This is the last cantrip Derrig gets. It's not great, but our other options aren't better. Blade Ward is concentration, we have familiars and summons, so we don't need Mage Hand. Poison Spray is resisted a lot. If we have more than one enemy near us, we are going to try our best to get out of the area and hide ourselves, not cast Thunderclap. Toll the Dead would be a good alternative. It can do more damage, has distance, and requires a wisdom save, but doesn't prevent healing. We would be better off throwing 3 or 4 Eldritch Blasts rather than taking True Strike, so that's not an option either. We're going to change a prepared spell. We're going to get rid of Hex and take Hold Monster. We'll get Hex this level with our subclass, so we can drop that and pick up Hold Monster. If you just need to hold the humongous whatever in place while your friends wail on it, then this is the spell. For our subclass, we're going to get Eldritch Hex. You always have the Hex spell prepared. When you cast Hex and choose an ability, the target also has disadvantage on saving throws of the chosen ability for the duration of the spell. This is when it really sucks that Hex is a concentration spell, because you have all of these charms and now Hold Monster, but you can't use Hex to land them. I'd probably house rule this where you can use Hex to get the disadvantage on the saving throw, but then Hex ends if the new concentration spell takes effect. Otherwise, you're using Hex so other people in the party can land their spells, and that's not what you want. You want your spells to stick. But I suppose you could hit one creature with Hex, then cast Minor Illusion and use Beguiling Magic on them to charm or frighten them with disadvantage. It's just convoluted. Thought Shield. Your thoughts can't be read by telepathy or other means unless you allow it. You also have resistance to psychic damage, and whenever a creature deals psychic damage to you, that creature takes the same amount of damage that you do. This might not be used in a lot of campaigns, but it's there if you need it. Okay, only 7 more levels left. Why did I do this to myself? Level 11 Warlock. We start getting Mystic Arcanum. Mystic Arcanum. We'll go with that. We'll get a 6th level Mystic Arcanum. You really should know your campaign by now to pick these once a day spells carefully. Most of the spells I could choose from are just better versions of things I can already do, something I'll do eventually, or something I don't want to do. I'm choosing Circle of Magic because it's not concentration. It's got good range, it's big area of effect, and it's grim, like my character. If you find yourself fighting hordes of enemies, or you know you will be soon, this is the spell you should take. For other options, Eye Bite might be more practical, but I don't really like it. Summon Fiend, you'll already have an Imp or Quasit Familiar, so might as well have a Fiendish Spirit too. It's concentration though, so you can't have an Aberration at the same time, but Fiends are a little tougher. For our 5th level spell that we can prepare, we're going to take Banishment. Banishment lets you just get rid of a creature for a minute or permanently if they are a certain type of monster. I didn't get it earlier because it's an abjuration spell, but it requires a charisma saving throw, which can be a weakness for a lot of creatures. You also get a whole 3rd level slot, which means you might be able to cut back on a nap. Probably not though. You'll probably just cast one more spell every encounter. For Warlock, level 12, we get to replace an invocation. We're going to swap out Eldritch Mind and take Gaze of Two Minds. We're dumping Eldritch Mind because we're going to take the Warcaster feat. Then we'll pick up Gaze of Two Minds. Before, we could cast spells through our familiar, but now we can do it through the fighter or barbarian in the party. Just sit in the back with invisibility, eat your popcorn, and shoot Synaptic Static and Eldritch Blast from Paul the Paladin. You could also telepathically bond with somebody that has to go someplace alone and tell them what to do or grab, maybe even roll perception checks when you're not in the room. But we also get another Eldritch invocation. We're going to take Whispers of the Grave because we want to interrogate the dead, unless somebody else already has the Speak with Dead spell. You could also opt for Mask of Many Faces to disguise self at will, or Visions of Distant Realms to use Arcane Eye, but we already have a little familiar and a flesh familiar through the Gaze of Two Minds, so I don't really see the point. We're going to take Warcaster for a feat. We get an ability score increase, so we're going to increase our charisma score by 1 again. You have advantage on Constitution saving throws that you make to maintain your concentration. Reactive spell. When a creature provokes an opportunity attack from you by leaving your reach, you can take a reaction to cast a spell at the creature rather than making an opportunity attack. The spell must have a casting time of 1 action and must target only that creature. Semantic components. You can perform the semantic component of a spell even though you have weapons or shield in one or both hands, which won't matter for us. Level 13 Warlock, a easy-ish level. We get another Mystic Arcana, which is a 7th level spell. We'll take Force Cage if you have the gold. I'm not a huge fan of this spell because it's expensive and it's concentration, but other D&D YouTubers love it, so I guess I'll give it a try. The biggest problem I see is that it requires concentration. So you can't trap them in one of your spells. You'd have to work with another magic user to set up the blender or microwave that you can trap them in. Or maybe you can just BG3 it with a barrel of oil and trap them in a burning area. Maybe you could even burn all of the oxygen out of the air and make them suffocate. Otherwise, Finger of Death is okay too. The damage is reliable and it could give you a zombie servant to go with your imp and aberration summon. I'll get a 5th level spell. I'll take Dream. If it's a social campaign or there are reoccurring enemies or allies, nothing says creeper that gets in your head like a great old one gnome in your dreams. At a minimum, this is plain wide communication. At best, you deny the big bad evil guy a night's rest after he ran away like a dog with his tail between his legs, and you do an extra 3d6 psychic damage that'll probably recover with a short rest. Sure, it's not a great spell, but when everyone else is going down for a long rest, you take a short rest, gain a spell slot back, cast Dream, and become your nemesis's worst nightmare. I call that dedication and thematic. Level 14 Warlock. Maybe the easiest, i.e. best level. We get Create Thrall. When you cast Summon Aberration, you can modify it so that it doesn't require concentration. If you do so, the spell's duration becomes 1 minute for that casting, and when summoned, the aberration has a number of temporary hit points equal to your Warlock level plus your Charisma modifier. In addition, for the first time each turn, the aberration hits a creature under the effect of your hex. The aberration deals an extra psychic damage to the target equal to the bonus damage of that spell. Now you can have a familiar, zombie, aberration, and a fiend if you took Summon Fiend at level 11 and Finger of Death recently. Since it's only for a minute, that kind of limits it to a battle, but it does put an extra body on the battlefield while you're concentrating on another spell. Level 15 Warlock. We're going to replace an invocation. We're going to replace Devil's Sight and take Repelling Blast. Dark Vision out to 120 feet is still good, and I would keep it if you are in the Underdark or underground all the time, but I'm taking Witch Sight so I can see anything within 30 feet. Plus, Derrig is still a gnome with 60 feet of Dark Vision. And we're going to take for our Eldritch Invocation, Witch's Sight, which I just mentioned. True Seeing out to 30 feet, yes please. But if you keep the Devil's Sight, Eldritch Spear may be a good option. 8th level Mystic Arcanum. We're going to take Dominate Monster. Why summon a devil spirit when you can get a storm giant to fight for you? Just know that if it takes damage or the time runs out, you'll have a hostile storm giant within 60 feet of you. Get another prepared spell. We're going to take Mislead. No, it's not a great spell, but it's an illusion that you can cast without anyone knowing. If you feel like things are getting a little heated for you, this spell can redirect a creature's attention from you to an illusory double of you. It doesn't look like there's a range for the double. Someone could be chasing or stalking your double for an hour. Level 16 Warlock, character level 19. We are almost done. We're going to get a feat. I actually had to redo this days after I thought I was done because I watched a video by Rules as Written. I was just dumb thinking epic boon feats were only available when you reached the 19th level of a class. But no, you can take an epic boon feat as long as you get a feat at 19th or 20th level. I was going to take Spell Sniper and it would have been okay. If you do want to take Spell Sniper, this is what you'd get. It's late in the game for this, but it would get us a 20 charisma. Enemies wouldn't get the benefit of anything less than full cover. Cthulhu forbid you're within 5 feet of an enemy, but if you were, then there's no more disadvantage on your Eldritch Blast. Your Eldritch Blast would also have a range of 180 feet with this feat. Keeping your distance has always been your friend, but it would also be your life partner with Spell Sniper. But instead, I'll take the boon of speed. I'll still take the 1 in charisma to get a 20 in charisma. I'll get to disengage as a bonus action, which also ends the grapple condition. Cthulhu forbid, and Derrig's speed will increase by 30 feet, which we really can use, even now. I've never played a character at 19th level, but I would imagine there's still a lot of things that shoot fireball or cast other spells that have a 20-foot radius, and walls still work as walls most of the time. With only 30 feet of movement, it's still hard to pop around a corner, cast a spell, and go around the corner and be out of that 20-foot radius. But if I have a total movement of 60 feet, that shouldn't be a challenge. Derrig could do something similar with Boon of Dimensional Travel, with the added bonus of being able to move to a place he'd have to climb up or jump to. He'd have to see the location, so no moving around corners. And he'd have to take an attack or a magic action, but sometimes you just want to move without an attack or a magic action. Plus, you can dash with an extra 30 feet of speed with the speed boon. The boon of Dimensional Travel doesn't work with dashing. With all the feats and ASIs, our abilities should look like this. 8 Strength, 16 Dexterity, 16 Constitution, 8 Intelligence, 10 Wisdom, 20 Charisma. Our final level, level 17 Warlock. We get a Mystic Arcanum at 9th level. We're going to take Weird because it's thematic and powerful. I don't know if I'd take the spell on a wizard, but this is the magnum opus for a great old one Warlock in my opinion. 30-foot radius sphere, no friendly fire, 120-foot range, 10d10 psychic damage, fear, continuing damage and fear if you maintain concentration, and they keep failing their saves. It's a straightforward spell, which is a little bit of a relief at this point. We also get a prepared spell, Hallucinatory Terrain, which is kind of a ribbon spell, but it's very thematic for this build. And this character is probably coming to the conclusion of his campaign. Might as well get his stronghold looking like he wants it to, because now he is the big bad evilish guy. Finally, we get our 4th spell slot, so we can cast a spell in every round of a normal length battle. Hopefully, if Derrig is using all of his feats, invocations, and features, the amount of spells or spell-like abilities he can use a day with 1 short rest is probably comparable to a wizard in a normal campaign. The spell options are nowhere near as good in my opinion, but the limitations allow us to create something different and so flavorful. I made this chart to track the spell saves of all my spells. You can see by this chart that Every spell save has a spell that can target it. On the lowest end, we have Strength with only Telekinesis targeting that. On the high end, we have 13 spells that target Wisdom. This may seem bad, but having this one save targeted means you can have a lot of options when you use the Eldritch Hex, assuming you can use the benefits of it while you cast another concentration spell. The spells that automatically work are spells that stay in place except for Hex. So what did we give up from our Warlock to get 3 levels of Bard? Things that didn't change in the last 3 levels are number of cantrips, spell slots, and slot levels. At Warlock 18, we would have lost an Invocation. We could have shifted some invocations around and gotten Repelling Blast earlier and definitely got Eldritch Spear, or taken some other unlimited spell invocation like Otherworldly Leap, but I was already struggling to find invocations that fit the character. At Warlock 16, character level 19, we got an epic boon anyways, so we're good. With the prepared spell, I was running low on options I wanted. The prepared spells are only level 5 and lower. Another prepared spell wouldn't have made much of a difference, I think. I probably would have just taken Hypnotic Pattern at some point. At Warlock 20, we missed out on Eldritch Master, which is just an improvement on the second level feature, Magical Cunning. So instead of taking 1 minute to gain half of your spell slots back, you gain all of them back like you would on a short rest. That means you get 2 more spell slots. That's not nothing, but I gave this up to have Beguiling Magic and Mantle of Inspiration since character level 6. I think that's a good trade-off. That's it for this video. I hope you liked it. It was my first one to go all 20 levels, which gives me so much more respect to YouTubers that do this like once or twice a week. I don't know if I'll do it again though. It took me so many hours. Please consider a donation to paypal.me/YouTubeIBuild. Thanks for your support, and please feel free to comment below on things you'd like to see in future videos. If you thought this video was helpful or would be helpful to someone else, hit that like button. And if you would like to see more character builds fleshed out, subscribe. That's all for my video. Have a good game.